Okay, so we're at Marrakech Airport. It's 8 a.m. or 8:30 a.m. on our last day. So we've had 11 nights here in Morocco. We did 3 nights in Rabat, 4 nights in Fez, and 4 nights in Marrakech, which I think was about the right time, don't you think, Stuart?
It was superb in each destination. Really just the right amount of time, because we were able to go and see things every morning after a leisurely breakfast, and then late afternoon just relax in our hotels.
Yes, in our Riads. So we didn't beat ourselves up. We tended to do 2 or 3 things a day, a madrasa or a mosque or a garden, and then spend the rest of the day just relaxing in the Riad. Because for me, the Riads were really one of the highlights of the trip. They were so appealing and luxurious and calm and peaceful, and a fabulous architecture. The first 2 we stayed at, I think, were the best in Rabat and Fez. They had been more recently renovated. What did you think of the last one in Marrakech?
I thought it was pretty good. Yeah, I was very happy with it. Lovely gardens and stuff.
Yes. Yep. Okay, yeah, it was a huge room. The furniture looked like it had come from Saddam Hussein's palace, this giant, chunky furniture. But it was wonderful. I must say, all of our Riads were located within the Medinas of the various towns, which is great, but it means when you step outside the sanctuary of your Riad, you are immediately thrust into the hurly-burly of the Medina and the souk, and that can be a little bit overwhelming.
It is an incredible contrast, but the flip side of it is when you come back in and you just walk through those doors, it's like walking into a real sanctuary.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's funny that we build up in intensity as we went from Rabat to Fez to Marrakech. So Rabat's the capital of Morocco, and it's very clean and orderly. And in some ways, the Medina there was, 90% local, 10% tourist. And then when we got to Fez, it was probably, I don't know, still felt about 60 or 70% local, 30% tourist. And you still felt that when you were in the Medina, you were seeing the locals living their lives.
Yes.
But then we got to Marrakech, and the Medinas were just incredibly intense, and it was 90% tourist, 10% local.
It was all about the tourists.
Yeah.
And there are also so many tour groups and stuff weaving their way through the narrow alleyways, as well as a lot of motorbikes travelling at speed. I
mean, everyone likes to say, I'm so glad we did what we did, but it did make me think I'm glad we're doing this as independent travellers, not as part of a group, because you'd see these poor tour groups, even of 10 or 14 people, following someone with a sign, a flag above them, trying to weave their way through the Medina, and all they would really see is the shoulders of the person in front, because it was so crowded, and particularly in Marrakech, where there are these motorbikes continually trying to get past you, and carts. It's much better to be on your own.
And so the people in the groups were kind of shuffling slowly forward. They were causing traffic jams, but also there was no opportunity for them, if they saw something they liked in a shop, they couldn't stop and look at it because they had to keep up with the group.
No. Yeah, so the shopping in Marrakech was clearly aimed at the tourists. So much more high-end shopping, handbags and rugs and cushions and brassware, all aimed at the tourists. Whereas in Fez, it was more pastry, lemons, lots of fresh food, lots of local produce, and leatherware. I have to say, in Fez, there's a lot of leatherware because of the tanneries. Yeah.
I mean, when I was walking around in Marrakech looking at some of the shops, part of me was thinking, oh, this is just for the tourists. But the other half of me was looking and going, oh, I like this. There was some really good stuff there.
Yeah. The other thing that was noticeable moving from Rabat to Fez to Marrakech is there's really 2 economies. There's the tourist economy and then there's the local economy. Our first dinners in Rabat, our first dinner literally cost us, I think it was 50 dirham, which is about $9. And that was for a pizza and a bottle of water.
That's $9 Australian.
$9 Australian dollars. $6 US. And then we went to a more substantial restaurant there, still in the Medina, and the next night, and had a bigger meal, soup and meat on skewers, and then a couscous dish, and that was 101 dirham, which is about 15 Australian dollars.
For the 2 of us.
For the 2 of us, yes. But by the time we got to Marrakech, we were easily spending 500 or 600 dirham on dinner.
Yeah, which is more like Melbourne prices.
It's more like Melbourne prices, yeah. And, I guess Fez was somewhere...
Fez was in between.
Was in between. We were spending... I think in Fez we actually chose to eat in the Riad more because the Riad was so nice, and then the food really was much better in the Riad restaurant.
So there are a lot of really good restaurants in the Riads. That's another thing to think about. Like, you don't have to go out to an independent restaurant every night to get really good food.
Yeah.
The Riads are good.
Yeah. So in some ways, Rabat was the more authentic experience. But having said that, the Medina there is very much more basic. Yeah, fluorescent lighting, just whitewashed walls and fluorescent lights. It's not as atmospheric. It's not as atmospheric as the Medinas in Fez and Marrakech. Yeah. So I found that, particularly in Marrakech, that I did tire of the intensity of the Medina, and as I tired of the M's, the Medinas, the motorcycles, the madrasas, and the mosques. After a few days, you want a bit of a break.
Because we'd seen quite a few.
We'd seen a lot of madrasas and mosques by that stage.
Very good they were too, but
Yes.
there was a certain sameness about a lot of the things like madrasas.
And Marrakech, the crowds are just much more intense. So we went to a madrasa in both Fez and Marrakech, and there would have been 1/10 of the crowd in the Fez one.
So James, for you, do you want to talk about some of your standout sites?
I think the standout sites for me were the gardens, particularly in Marrakech, the garden Jardin Marjarel and what's called the small garden. They were fabulous. There was actually a lovely garden in Rabat, the Andalusian garden. That was fabulous. I think Volubilis was a standout when we went for a day trip from Fez to Volubilis.
Yeah.
That was
Volubilis is the ancient Roman ruins. It was originally the provincial capital.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, that was a 5-hour day trip from Fez, which actually poisoned us against the idea of doing more day excursions. I ended up with a giant headache. It was just a long time in the car for about an hour and a half at Volubilis.
So it was really satisfying, the journey and then looking around the ruins. But the light itself was so bright, we kind of got headaches by the end of the day.
And your driver feels he has to give you value for money, which is fair enough. It cost us 1,200 dirham for the driver, and he would have been prepared to have us pretty much for the whole day. But we went to Volubilis, and then he took us to Meknes. Well, he took us to that small town. I forget the name now. I'll put it on the screen. Took us to a small town, which was great. He said, I'll take you to the mosque. We said, don't worry. We've seen enough mosques. And then we went to Meknes. We looked at the view over Meknes, which was lovely. But then he wanted to take us into the Medina of Meknes and the madrasa. And we actually said, actually, no, we've had enough for the day. We'd been going 4 or 5 hours. It was hot. I had a headache, and I just had enough. But there's only so many madrasas and Medinas you need to see.
So earlier on you touched on some of the gardens, and I think that's right, James. They really were highlights. I really like the Jardin Marjarel at Marrakech, which was built by Yves Saint Laurent.
Yeah, or resurrected by Yves Saint Laurent, is that right? Or
quite possibly, yeah.
His partner.
But it's got a very famous kind of blue buildings, blue pots, and blue water features in a very kind of attractive garden setting.
You do need to book tickets ahead, so we booked 2 days ahead to get our slot. So we got a 1:30 slot. You need to be there, and you get half an hour to enter. But then once you're in, you can stay as long as you like. You want to allow 90 minutes to see the full garden.
The other garden in Marrakech that was really good was called the Secret Garden. And that was really 2 gardens that are there, and one of them was a traditional Islamic layout, very beautiful.
And the other thing I think was a highlight in Marrakech was the place near where we were staying, the
Dar El Bakar.
The Dar El Bakar, which I'm not actually sure. Was that a madrasa of some sort, or a palace?
No. Well, I think it was originally built for one of the pashas. I think.
Yes.
I think so.
See this,
but I have to say that had the best tile work. So we were really impressed by all the tiles in all the madrasas. But the Dar El Bakar had the most elaborate tile work, the finest tile work, and the most kind of impressive array of kind of colours.
Yes. See, this is where people who do guided tours or so, there you go. There you go. You don't even know what you were looking at, which is true to us to an extent. We did have to do our own research, and quite often we would look it up after we went through what we were looking at. But it's more just the visual impact. And what I really can't go with, I really can't stand standing, listening to someone talking for 5 to 10 minutes, explaining what something is. I need to keep moving. I'm not one to sit and stand and listen.
There was a cafe there that is staffed by people with fez hats, and it's a very beautiful cafe, but there's a huge wait to get in. I think it's over 2 hours.
It was 2 hours.
And that's because it's gone viral on Instagram,
Yes.
which is very unfortunate.
And we got there at 15 minutes past opening time, and it was a 2-hour wait if you wanted to have a cup of coffee, because some influencer put their mug on Instagram in that cafe, and apparently everyone has to go there now.
Let's just say we didn't wait.
Yes, we didn't wait, but they did let us poke our head in and take a photo and some video, so that was good. Anyway, so that's our 11 days in Morocco.
All up, I would say it is well worth it. It's absolutely marvellous.
Well worth it, and I would encourage people to do it at their own pace. Take your time. Don't feel you have to see everything, because a lot of it is repetitive. You know, you don't need to see every palace and every madrasa. The one thing we didn't do, of course, was the trip across the desert from Fez to Marrakech. We caught the train, the 7-hour train journey, which I really enjoyed. It was just a lovely day.
I can't believe you didn't want to get on the back of a camel.
I had no desire to get on a camel. I had no desire to spend 2 days in either a minivan or even an SUV, just being dragged along at according to someone else's timetable. That's just us. Most people do that trip and they rave about it, but I didn't think it was us. Yeah, we did a camel ride about 25 years ago in Egypt, and that was enough for life, I think. Yes. Anyway, yes, so we're waiting for the Ryanair flight out of Marrakech to Madrid. We arrived in luxury on Turkish Airlines business class. We're leaving via Ryanair. So it's only a short flight, though.
It's fine.
It's fine.
The price is right.
Yes.
Anyway,
cheers. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. And please comment. Really like to hear what people think. Yeah, or don't be too harsh. Okay. Cheerio.